Ready.
Great. Oh, we probably, so everyone is, I think many of you, anyhow, let me just say, first of all, Early Childhood Cares is the early intervention and early childhood special education program for Lane County. We serve children who are birth until they're eligible to go into kindergarten, which is around age 5, and who are experiencing some kind of developmental delay or have an identified disability or are at risk of developing some delays in the future. We also support their families. So you can reach us anytime at earlychildhoodcares.uoregon.edu. We have a website and ways to contact us, or call at 541-346-2578. Or email us at eccares@uoregon.edu. And I add that, I know many of you are aware of us, but if people are viewing this and don't know how to find us, we thought that was important. So anyhow, I'm Judy Newman, and I am actually the strategic advisor for Early Childhood Cares, but I was the founder and director for many, many years. So the topics I'm talking to you about today are the ones that are near and dear to my heart. And so first, let me just ask, who has a child that will be going to kindergarten this fall, coming fall? So we have 1, 2.
I do.
4. Great. Okay, many of you do. Good. Because sometimes, so I'm going to sort of cover, I'm going to start out with just the transition to kindergarten process. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some resources and kindergarten readiness kinds of things, the way Oregon approaches it, that might be interesting also to you. So I'm going to, I have a PowerPoint, just like everyone. So let me share my screen. Let me show you my screen, and we will get into our topic here. Can you see the PowerPoint, everyone? Yes, okay, I'm going to make it full screen then. Great. And if you want to get a hold of me with any questions, feel free. There's my email. I'm pretty easy to find in the in our program directory. Oops. Let me make sure. There we go. First of all, some facts. Annually, early childhood special education, which is what your child is in, we transition over 1/3 of our children to kindergarten in the spring and summer. For early childhood cares, for our specific programs, that's about 500 to 600 children. So we're really busy at this activity every year. It's a really important work. In Lane County, we have 16 school districts that we work with. So each school district has a process that is similar. We follow, which I'm going to talk about, a certain sequence of events. But in each one of the districts, it looks just a little bit different because there are different people involved and different ways they approach special education in school. But so hopefully, and I'm quite sure that every one of you that has a child that's going to kindergarten in this coming fall, you have a transition plan that you have written on your child's IFSP. And the district representative has either attended or at least been invited to attend your child's IFSP. They should have this year before. Most districts don't start attending until a little bit later on, closer to when they're transitioning. But some of you may have met some of the school district representatives. But on the IFSP, a typical transition plan looks something like this. We have username Julio that Early Childhood Cares will provide you with transition to kindergarten information. School district representative will be invited to the IFSP. They'll review all the educational records of your child and will determine and probably do additional assessment, may not. But the first process is to determine whether they're going to be eligible. I'll talk a little bit more about this in detail, but it sort of goes through what the process is and should have been discussed during your IFSP, this last IFSP. So this is a point, transition to kindergarten is a really interesting point because it's when early childhood and school age really come together, they intersect. And, for early intervention, early childhood special ed students and early childhood cares, it's been great because we've been really trying to work on this process. I know many of the kids that typically transition to into kindergarten, whether you're typically developing, you've been home with your parents, or you've been in preschool, it's a big transition to go to school. So I'm really grateful that we actually have a process to at least help with this. So several stakeholders with their own experiences and perspectives and goals, everyone's invested in this process. When I say stakeholders, I mean parents are a stakeholder, early learning's a stakeholder, school, we all sort of come from a different perspective, but we all have the one goal in mind, and that is to make sure our kids have a smooth transition into kindergarten. So we have early childhood providers, early childhood special ed providers. So if your child's in a preschool, the preschool teacher and the early childhood special ed providers are all know your child. If you're in childcare, if your child's in childcare or Head Start, school district personnel, and parents, of course. The transition to kindergarten presents many challenges and opportunities. And one thing I just want to say is it's a challenge and an opportunity for all children. And our children who have some special needs or need other additional services to be successful have some additional things to pay attention to. But coming from an early childhood world into a K-12 school world is a big transition for everyone. So what we did was bring together all those representatives. So we brought together, Early Childhood Cares did this quite a few years ago. I was involved, but we brought together representatives from schools that do the transitions. We brought together parents. We brought together early childhood special educators. And we talked about how do we really prepare, how do we do our best job? How do we really understand what everyone's looking for? How to make this worthwhile? So we collaboratively developed a process for school districts and early childhood special educator providers to make this happen. And so with the parents we brought together were parents who had recently been through that transition process. And the people from the district we brought together were the ones that really meet you all and work on this. So people that really know what has gone well and what hasn't and what needs to be done. Now, these have changed a little bit over time, and they're a little bit different from district to district, but the basic foundational process we follow and the concerns and things that are on people's minds have pretty much stayed quite consistent. So together we wrote a transition manual. You probably have gotten it in the mail or email rather. It's a handbook, and if you haven't, we'll be sure that Nellie knows where it is and that you'll receive it. But we pretty routinely send it out to families. And in this handbook, we talked about, and we're going to talk about this today, what are some of the differences between early childhood special education and school? What are the steps in a transition process? What should I expect? There are also some tips from successful transition processes, both from parents, from ECSE providers, and from school personnel. What are things that we've learned from our processes that would make this even a more positive and smoother process? And what are some other resources? So, what's the difference? So one of the things that we talked about, what's different in terms between you go to school? One of the big differences is you guys have all been part of an IFSP and a placement process. That's an individualized family service plan. And you're going to be moving to school where those documents are called IEPs, individualized education plans. And so there's some really specific differences. For one thing, you may or may not have included these, but we do ask and include families goals in an IFSP goal. IEP does not have family goals. So you won't be asked what your goals are as a family, although you will be asked, what are your goals for your child? What do you want your child to be doing? When you're in early childhood special education in an IFSP, we really focus on developmental goals. And when you start going to school, they're going to be talking academic performance. How is your student going to fit in and work with the curriculum that there is? Now in kindergarten, many of our kindergartens are a little more developmental, so it's not going to seem super abrupt, but some of the language you might hear might be more about academic performance, but it will be relevant to your child's age and developmental level. So in early childhood special education, we try to integrate plans and services. So if your child is getting maybe some private therapies or some other kinds of community services that it makes sense to bring all those providers together, in early childhood special education, we do that. In school, it's pretty much just focused on what the school provides and academic performance. And in early childhood special education, we use one form statewide. That might not have been apparent to you, but if you had moved here from Coos Bay or Portland or Bend, you would see the exact same form in an IFSP here that you saw there if your child was getting services. But from school district to school district, the forms might look different, but you'll be able to recognize some of the components. And placement options, of course, are a little bit different between, when your child goes to kindergarten, they are with all other kids that are kindergarten age because everyone is going to school. When kids are in preschool, there's so many different varied choices because there is no universal preschool. There's no universal childcare, but there is universal school. So our placement options can be very varied. Your child might have gone to a preschool at a Head Start, or you wanted to serve them at home. Whereas in school, any services your child receives will be given in school. So those are really the big differences that you're going to see, and they can be really a big difference and an adjustment to people. But just know your child's entering a different phase of their education and life. So in the handbook, there's actually there's arrows, but let me just tell you the steps. And these steps should really be included in every process that you go through, because these are the steps that are required by law. So I really pulled these out. So whether you go to Bethel School District or Springfield or Eugene School District or Fern Ridge or Florence, wherever your child's going to be entering school, this is the process that you will engage in with the school district. And we already talked about the first one, that the transition to kindergarten is planned at the IFSP meeting a year before this transition occurs. So people start thinking about it. Our school districts are aware your child might be starting in their school the next fall. And the school district, they have access to our database. And so because they're an educational entity, they would have access to your child's records, not to every child's records, just to the records, meaning your IFSP, to your evaluation report. So it just makes the job a little bit easier. And they will go in and review those records. In the old days, before we had a database, we used to have to print off all those materials or have them and then actually hand deliver them to districts. But now we can all share the same access and database. And then the school district, after looking at your child's records, at their IFSP, at their evaluation, at their eligibility, they'll determine whether they want to do any further assessment or evaluation. Most districts will do something at this point, but not all. So your student might get reevaluated for another eligibility, for a different eligibility, or they might just be looked at to see what's the most up-to-date level of their performance. And then after all that is done, that's usually done in one meeting. And it could be done at you will be informed, and you will be giving permission to make this happen. So it could be done, it could be done at the school district, or it could be done in your child's preschool setting or wherever they are. Each district and each family has some different preferences about that. And then after that, you meet with the district and we'll talk about eligibility. You'll sign paperwork for schools. You'll develop the IEP. A lot of our districts take a lot of the goals and objectives that we already have, and some don't. You might be ready for new ones. And talk about placements. You know, where would my child be to get these services? How would they get these services? And that usually takes anywhere between 1 and actually 3 meetings, all those things. So I'm going to just pause there for a second, see if I've been talking a lot. If you do have a question, maybe you could help me, Nellie. You could just raise your virtual hand, because then I'll for sure see it.
Yes, of course. Let's see.
Oh, I see. Good. Carrie.
So I have a question about when they go, like the school district goes in to evaluate or like see what they're doing or whatever. What does that look like? What are they looking for? What are they?
I could do my best to answer that without. So when they look at your record, so you have your child has an eligibility in EC cares, right? In early childhood cares. And it might be developmental delay. It might be speech and language. It might be autism. It could be anything. So I think the district will look at that and then determine, would this then still qualify for school age? Now, there are 11 or 12 different eligibilities for services. There's a whole long list. And actually, at this point in time, they're all the same in early childhood special ed and in school. It was a couple of years ago, we extended the developmental delay eligibility to school. So they may or may not, if they go in, they might want to see, first of all, if the eligibility is still appropriate, but most importantly, what their current level of performance and functioning is.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does. I was just wondering what they are going in to look at, because I've had to sign all those. And so I was like, I don't know, what are they going to look at when everything's already been evaluated or looked at?
Well, I think they want to sort of see what I don't know how long ago the evaluation was done. And I don't think they try to duplicate anything we do, but don't forget they're going from developmental to more academic. So they might look at more at functional performance, you know, in preschool. How is your child getting along with other children? What are the kinds of goals that we could address in school? So they'll be looking at that kind of stuff. And I'm glad they're going into the school, because you know, you can see kids in a different way there too. So
Right. Okay, thank you.
you're welcome. Any other questions? Then I'm going to just keep going on here. So I just want to share. So this is really focused in, but we would always have a panel of parents that have been through the process of transition. This was the favorite part. They've been through the process of transition. They were talking to you as a parent who is just going through it with your child. And they would share some things that were helpful for them and things that they learned. How to prepare for the IEP and be able to contribute. So they said, this is what you really need to do. Really think about what your goals are for your child and what you really want for your child. Give it some thought before you go into the meeting. Jot down some notes for yourself so you don't forget things, because it's really important for you to really think through, because you are a team member, just like you are in early childhood special ed, and what you want to see should be a big part of that meeting. And I hope the district, if they don't tell you this before, or they don't write it down on the meeting notice, be sure you could ask them and say, who's going to be in the meeting? Who's going to be there? You know, is it going to be the person who evaluated my child, the teacher, an administrator? Can I invite is my early childhood provider going to be there? Can I invite them if they aren't? So you have a right to invite people to an IEP meeting, and it's probably good to know who's going to be there in advance, and just an idea of what's going to be covered. So I would just ask for that information. The more prepared you are, the more confident you'll be. And then to go into it with a really positive and collaborative attitude. Everyone said this because this is what I heard from parents. It's a really scary time. And sometimes parents think I really have to get what I want, or, but people really want the best for your child. Everyone really is going into that with that idea. So listening, being positive, etc., is good. And the thing that my takeaway that I hear year after year, if you go into a placement or something is not working out the way you want it to work out, you can call another meeting and you can change it till you get it right. So there was not one parent who had been through the process that said it hadn't worked out for their child. So I want you to really remember that. It's not, if you go into it and it's not working out the way you want, people really want to work with you to make it right. Don't forget, your child's going into a whole new environment, and the school people know what that looks like more than you do for the most part, probably. So just know that people are on the same team and want to work it out, and don't be afraid to ask. So other information that you should get from us, and hopefully in the manual or in addition, is depending on what school district you go to, there's a different contact for every school district, and we have a list of those, and you should receive those. And if you don't, ask your service coordinator. In the handbook that we gave you, there are some books that you can, there's I think a bibliography of a few suggested books that you could get if you want to from the library. Just, books you could read to your child to get them ready to go to school. And then there are other resources that you can always call on for support. If you really want more support or more information, there's a statewide organization called FACT Oregon, and both in the parent rights brochure you get and in the handbook, there's a website, and they have parents, they have resources you can talk to, and also direction services is in our community. So again, those resources are listed in the manual, and they're also listed, some of them in your parent rights handbook. So the big thing I want to say, and then I'm going to see if people have more questions, because I'm going to move us along to sort of a related area, but relationships. Get to know the people, let them get to know you. You can work anything out once you've sort of developed a relationship with the people you're working with. And probably that's something you've learned in early childhood special education. Well, the same is true of school. Sometimes it feels a little more intimidating, but they're really people and they want the best for your kids. So collaborate, be positive, and ask questions. And remember, you have a right to know. So I'm going to just again pause here to see if anyone has any comments or questions. I'm curious. I'm going to not share my screen here for a second and then come back to it. So are people involved in any steps of this process yet? And I don't know your name, but it says iPhone.
Oh,
okay. My name is Sarah, and I received a phone call and touch base with the IEP coordinator of the school yesterday, and ended up with a little bit of concern afterwards. A lot of our kiddos' behaviors are actually at home, and he seems rather timid and does okay at school, but there's certainly a lot going on in his little body. And so with her phrasing it, and as you mentioned, taking the family aspect out, not worrying about home as much and focusing just on school, I'm honestly a little bit worried that he might not end up with an IEP, which I know from my older son that he could really benefit from. How often is it that kids aren't able to switch from an IFSP to an IEP?
Pretty infrequently. Most of the students, the kids that we have transitioning to school that don't get IFSP, IEPs from here are often our kids who are, we only see them for speech and language concerns. But
Okay.
not always. So I would say, I haven't tracked that data for some years, but I used to look at that closely and it was pretty consistent from year to year. So I would say about 20% of our kids, but about 80% do get an IEP in school. So I would definitely pull in the early childhood, your service coordinator that you're working with, and have a conversation with them, because they often are contacted and they can very much be part of the process, because there could be things they're seeing and can share that will help make that happen.
Okay, hopefully that'll ease some of my concerns.
I hope so. That would be my best suggestion, and definitely keep them in that loop.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I have Carrie.
So that was pretty much my question also, to be honest, because I had gotten a phone call from our school district psychologist last week, and we've been through this with her a few times, not an IEP. And I was wondering, how can they really stop it? Like, what really is the percentage of, like, how can they stop it?
Well, I think I gave you the percentages. I think their job is to really see if the child will need some supports in school and qualify with, in school. So I would, again, do the same thing I mentioned, just a few minutes ago, is pull in your service coordinator and make
Yeah,
sure.
she definitely knows my concerns about it.
Yeah. And does she, yeah, so that's great. And they can really be helpful, because, I don't know what district is your child going to?
South Lane School District.
South Lane. And how about yours?
Eugene.
Eugene 4J. Okay, yeah. So, we have ongoing relationships with all the school psychs and the people that do those transitions. So our folks could easily, have conversations with you. It'd be helpful. So.
Judy, we have also a question in the chat when you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
Katie would like to know, when should we expect this process to start? We haven't had anyone reach out from the school district, haven't heard from our current IFSP members about any of this being scheduled.
Katie, what school district, what school district will you be going to?
Sorry, I couldn't get it to unmute. We're in Bethel.
You're in Bethel, okay. The reason I asked is each district has its different timelines. So like Eugene 4J usually starts earliest because they're the biggest district and they have a lot of kids to transition. So typically this process starts anywhere from January till I would say at the very latest, you should be contacted right after spring break. And if you don't, I would just reach out to either the district contact you have or our service coordinator to say, why haven't I heard something? If your child has a speech and language eligibility, a communication disorder, they often are the last ones that they pull in for transition. So if that's your situation, it might be one of the later ones too. So hopefully that's helpful, but I would really, given this is the last week before spring break, wouldn't hurt to even call them and say, before people go on spring break, or do it right when you get back. Check it out. Great. So did people get the handbook I'm talking about? I think we've been emailing them to people. You guys remember seeing that? Good. Was that great? And is the list of contacts in there still? Which good, perfect. That's important. We used to do this with all of our families together, but our school districts have really learned the value of this. So because, Katie, you haven't gotten it. Will you be sure and give Nellie or me your email, and I'll help follow up with that too. I'll make sure you get that. So anyhow, now our districts, because every district does it a little bit different, will take on meeting with families in groups or individually rather than us as a whole agency. And actually, I think it's probably been more direct, so. So you guys ready to have a little more presentation then? I have a little more information about how we think about kindergarten readiness and that kind of thing. Good? Okay. Let me know if you have any questions as we go. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about, could sometimes for this transition time, we could start this conversation as early as 3-year-old, but now how it gets approached. So this has been a really nice resource, and I'll be sure you have the website to go to. I'm going to show you what's here. So Oregon, a couple of years ago, developed Oregon's Early Learning and Kindergarten Guidelines. And the idea of this was to really start showing what are the developmental sequences and which areas do kids want to be thinking about while they're in preschool and then as they go into kindergarten. And it really does look at age 3 through the end of kindergarten. It looks at some of the skills we want to see kids developing. So the key features of this handbook, and again, I'm going to give you a link to it, are the different domains that we're looking at. They're color coded, which really helps you use the manual. It has information about how adults can work with children to support development. It gives you supports for if your child is a dual language learner, if English isn't their first language. It gives you supports for kids with special needs. And it shows you the developmental progressions. It has age level references, but the age level references may or may not mean a lot to all kids, but the developmental progression really is good to see. What comes first, what should that develop into? There are also some parent one-page guides that are really convenient as easy reference materials. So remember I said there were domains, and here they are. We talk about approaches to learning, and these are behaviors. These are the kinds of skills kids need to be able to actually attend and take turns and do things so that they're ready to learn in a group kind of setting. And hopefully your child's been learning some of those in preschool, and they'll be refining those and going deeper with those in kindergarten. Social emotional development is really important. Language and communication, literacy, and math. So let's just take a little closer look at these. So approaches to learning includes, I'm not going to go through all these, I'm going to give you a flavor of what's here, but it's really about emotional behavior, self-regulation, meaning if I start to get upset, can I calm myself down? It's not that kids won't get upset, but do I have some skills and abilities to help myself be regulated in a group? Can I problem solve? Cognitive self-regulation is really a big way of saying, do I have some skills to learn to problem solve and figure things out? Do I show some curiosity and initiative and creativity? These are all sort of things in general. And let me just show you some examples of what that might look like. It seems a little less out of reach when you can see a child manages emotion more with increasing independence. These are things kids learn. We don't expect them to even come into kindergarten all being able to manage all their emotions, but are they responsive to coaching and learning from that? And they're getting more independent. Can they follow rules and routines with some independence? Handle and take care of materials, managing actions. So, how do they respond if someone hits them or grabs something from them? But controlling impulse and maintaining focus and sustaining attention, persistent tasks. These are all things that may or may not be on an IFSP, but are things that we're working on in preschool settings, and you will continue to work on your child in kindergarten. Initiative and curiosity. You know, are they initiating for things they want to play with and activities they want to participate in? And are they really interested? Do they really show an interest? Can you engage them? And using, you know, playing imaginatively, starting to really do some things with their imagination and in art and all sorts of things. And so this, I'm not going to go through this. This is what the parent handout looks like. And I'm going to give you the link where you can get these. So you can get a one-page handout that sort of summarizes these. And you could have them around the house if there's a particular area you want to work with your child. Social emotional development. You know, do they have relationships with trusted adults, with other children? Do they have an idea of who they are, you know, and that they have emotions and they can label emotions and know when they're feeling happy or sad or frustrated. Has some confidence, a sense of belonging to this is their family, this is their class. Being able to express a range of emotions. And also some empathy, starting to really notice and care for others, other children, other adults, and start to manage their own emotions. And you can see here with some of the examples of relationships with adults and how you interact with other children. Can you play side by side, which is how it starts, and then can you play interactively and cooperate. And again, there's a one-page handout on this that you could have as reminder. Language and communication, attending and understanding, communicating and speaking, and you know, expanding vocabulary so you have more and more ways to express yourself. And again, those are more self-evident and obvious. Understanding responding, can actually communicate information and understand, follows, and uses social rules. It's time to have snack or lunch. Let's go and do that. Again, more and more things to be able to express what's on their mind, what their wants and needs are, and what's going on with them. And again, a one-page handout. And then we have literacy, phonological awareness, print and alphabet knowledge, comprehensive text and structure, and writing. So these sound, again, big, but phonological awareness is that there's an awareness that when you speak, words are made up of sounds. So they can really identify smaller segments. You start tuning in to knowing that is what words are made up of. And understanding how print is used. You know, some kids really like to know if you're using your finger to follow along while you're reading, and beginning to identify letters of the alphabet and produce correct sounds for the letters. Starting to do storytelling, asking and answer questions. Writing, child writes for a variety of purposes. So a lot of times that has to do with dictation. They might have a story to tell and you're writing it. That's where it begins. And that was their story and they see it written down. Oh, that's where stories come from. Sort of fun. And then the literacy handout. And then the last one is math, counting and cardinality, operations and algebraic thinking. It's hard to imagine that our preschool kids are learning these things, but they do begin very young. measurement and data, number and operations, geometry and spatial sense. So counting and cardinality, you know numbers, names, you know the name of numbers, and you can count in a sequence. You might be able to recognize the number of objects in a small set. Oh, there's 2 there, 1, 2. Comparing numbers, which one's more and which one's less. This number 1 represents 1 thing. This number 3 represents 3 things. And understanding just the idea of adding things to it, make a bigger amount, taking things away makes a smaller amount. Seeing patterns. Measuring objects with measures objects by their various attributes. Standard and non-standard. This one's bigger, this one's smaller. Let's put them in order from the biggest to the smallest. Exploring positions of objects in space, which is really prepositions, describes and compares. So all these early concepts are really foundational math skills. And again, a parent handout. But what I want to show you here, I know you can't read all these words, but each one of these skills that we talked about in this manual, it shows the developmental sequence. So let's look at emotional functioning. Goal is child expresses a broad range of emotions and recognizes these emotions in their self and others. So by the age of 3, at the end of age 3, this is, you might be able to express a broad range of emotions across contexts, such as during play and interactions with an adult. Notice when strong emotions are exhibited by others. Oh, you're happy, you're mad. Describe some of these emotions. And then by 4, they're getting more complex. And you can communicate to describe your own feelings. By entry into kindergarten, which is at age 5, somewhere in that continuum, you can recognize and label basic emotions in books, photographs, or in media images. You can at least use at least 3 to 5 words or gestures to describe your own feelings. Use at least 3 to 5 words or gestures to describe the feelings of adults or other children. And then it takes it all the way by the end of kindergarten, what you should get. But I want you to pay less attention to the ages and more attention to the progression. Your child is probably somewhere along this continuum and they're learning in this sequence. But each one of the skills is laid out this way so that you can see a progression. Child follows rules and routines with increasing independence. So by the time the child is at the end of age 3, when supported by a trusted adult, they can follow simple established rules and routines with occasional reminders, like hang up your coat or go sit at the table. You know, these routine things that you want them to be able to learn. And then with occasional reminders, they can follow some established rules following like end of lunch routine, put your dishes in the dish, you know, and they get more and more independent. And so for, you know, here's one more example I'll use, identifies letters of the alphabet and produce the correct sound. So by the end of age 3, with support from a trusted adult, you might show an awareness of letters. Oh, that's a letter, show us a letter. So they might be singing something like the ABC song or recognizing letters from one's own name, kind of a thing. And then recognizing names, maybe 4 or 5, not yet in kindergarten, they might be able to say, oh, that's my name. Or look at a letter and produce a sound. That's a ba, ba. And then by entry to kindergarten, again, can they name any letters? And then, of course, it gets more sophisticated. And again, I want to emphasize that the ages are not as important as the sequence. So you will, in this PowerPoint, see, you can access this whole manual with this whole complete, all this information on the Oregon Department of Ed's website, and it'll be in the PowerPoint right here. And the early learning kindergarten guidelines include these specific handouts, you'll see a place for handouts. And also it's in different languages, English, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, and Vietnamese. So all this is on this link. And I encourage you to take a look at it. You can download it. It's a great little handbook. So that's the information I was going to cover today. Do we have any comments, questions? I'd love to hear what you're thinking about going to kindergarten. Are there any other things that you'd like to talk about that would be helpful? Some of your fears, some of your excitement?
There's a couple questions in the chat, Judy.
Oh, good. Okay.
Let's see. Somebody would like the link for this information. I can make sure that gets sent out to everybody.
Great.
And are these slides included in the parent handout for transition?
No.
I can also, if you're okay
Well,
with that, I can.
I would say the first piece of information I did, most of the information's in the manual. The first part about the steps of transition and the advice from parents and the books and resources. The second part of the presentation would be in the link on our Oregon Department of Ed webpage. Does that seem clear?
Yes. Let's see. I think, one more question. How and when will placement be determined for which school children are attending?
You know, that's always the question that I get. I'll tell you, I put this link to the handbook right in there too. I think that's the very last thing. I mean, it's really an interesting thing I've learned. So I think the thing the parents want to know the most is where my child's going to go to school. And unfortunately, in the sequence of events, first there's determining eligibility, then there's writing an IEP, and then it's talking about where. So it's often the spring and sometimes even the summer that parents find out.
A follow-up question. Is it at all a common occurrence for children to be placed out of the school district that they live in?
No, it's not common. I'd say the vast majority of kids get served. Districts are required to have a range of services and should meet most kids' needs, but occasionally it does happen. And it's usually for some unique kind of need of the child. Sometimes there's life skills classes. So are any kids being looked at for life skills? And those are classrooms that are run by the ESD, the Lane ESD. And those go across districts because the districts pool their resources to run those. But they're usually not that far away.
There are no other questions in the chat that I can see right now.
So I'm curious, what are some people's biggest concerns? What makes you nervous when you think about sending your child to kindergarten next year? Carrie?
The child psychologist for the schools to be stopping them needing the help that they really need.
Wow. That would be scary for sure. I hope that they are not seen or acting as gatekeepers. So I would say, be really plan for the meetings, be really articulate about what your child needs. And if you can get, the current providers serving your child, they see the same needs to help reinforce that.
Okay.
Another question in the chat. My child receives other services. Outside of school. Is kindergarten ever a half day here? We moved from Washington last summer, so learning double for this transition.
Yeah, it is a big double. All of our kindergartens now are full day. So I don't think there are any half day kindergartens. And I think the school probably would not I don't know, it would be an unusual accommodation. So I know that's really challenging for kids who get a lot of hours of ABA, for sure. And I would just see most districts, that would just be a negotiation with them. But I think that there's been some concerns about pulling kids out part of the day, because then they aren't so much part of their kindergarten group there. So I wish ABA providers worked a little more with us to do more hours that schools weren't in session. That would be ideal.
Okay, another comment in the chat. My biggest fear is that my child not being able to communicate if something is wrong and it isn't working.
So I would say, back to the piece of advice to go into this meeting, being very, sharing your goals, being really clear about what those are. And I would share that. I would say, I'm really worried, this is how my child communicates what he wants or needs, and this is what he needs. I don't know what he's doing in preschool or with you, but I would be really sure that that is communicated to the people that are going to be working with them in kindergarten, and that you could even write that in as a goal on the IEP, and then you could feel even more sure that it would be honored. But I would definitely express that really clearly and say, this is how I figure it out. This is how his teachers figure it out. These are the things that work with him and or her. Does your child use an alternative communication, or is he or she starting to learn language communication?
He's been speaking for almost a year and a half now. He's in his second year of the preschool program. And so he has a lot of words, he knows like every animal on the planet, and, is good at math and stuff like that. But his communication can often seem scripted. Like when he gets home from school, I ask him, what did you do at school today? Or how was school today? And he just goes through each of the things that they do. When he gets there, they play, and then they go to the gym, and then they go to the bathroom, and then they have snack time, and then they have groups, and then goodbye circle, and then ride the bus home. And that's what he tells me every day when I ask him how he's starting to, I can ask him, what did you learn about? And he might tell me, they did a certain thing of the ABCs that day or something, but he can't be like, oh, another kid's not being nice to me, or God forbid my teacher's not nice, or anything like that. That's my concern, is him being able to because I'm not there. So him being able to reassure me that he likes it, or it's good for him,
So maybe asking for a while to get an email from the teacher, how his day went, or you could ask what kind of communication parents have with home.
That's great. That's a great idea. I have a hard time asking for things that I feel is going to be somebody going out of their way.
Well, this is your kid.
Yeah.
And, if you have a hard time, bring someone with you that can support you to do that.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, it is sometimes hard, but, if that's really what is on your heart, I think it's important to express that. Hopefully teacher, they'll be welcoming. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think the name of this. The ARC, there are these one-page profiles we've helped parents make. And I know where it talks about what my children likes, what they don't like, a little bit about my family, you know, that I've had families bring those to transition meetings. I'm looking for one right now to share with you if I can find one. Because those are sort of fun, and that would be a fun parent chat to actually to have parents make those. You know, just with photographs of the family, you know, typically developing kindergartners and first graders make these too, you know, and then they hang them up in the classroom. So you know a little bit about the child, how I communicate. How will you know I like things, so.
Okay, another question in the chat, Judy.
Yep.
Do we need to register to enroll within the school district / kindergarten now? Or is that done with the help of IFSP and IEP / EC cares, early childhood care?
That's an excellent question. I think you need to enroll. Now, when you have your meeting with your school district people, I would ask them that question because it's probably a little bit different from each school. Do I need to also enroll at the school where my child's going to be getting services, or my neighborhood school, or do you enroll them for me? They need to be enrolled and you want to be sure. So I would ask that question. I think every district does it a little bit differently. But you want to get all that, you know, all those packets that get mailed out to families and all that. So with the calendar and the fill out this form, emergency forms, you know, all that. And that's what registering, then you'll be on the list to get that stuff. Personal profile. Whoop. Okay. Oh, guess what? I found some. I can show you a quick peek at them. How's that? What a personal profile looks like. See if it's something that we could talk about. Oh, there's another question in the chat. Share screen. Okay. So let me see here. Let's look at Libby. So, you know, it's just a one pager. This one a family just did. There's a picture of Libby, and, you know, talks about her strengths and skills, and important to Libby, the Muppets, playing with friends, activities, playing computer games, you know, things she likes, strengths and skills, people like and admire about me. I like to help others, follow the rules. I'm polite and use my manners, etc. And how can I support Libby? Be flexible and clear in how you communicate. Give her time to get her thoughts out and be patient. She must know who the adult in charge is at all times. You know, certain unique things about her. I have lots of these examples, and there's sort of a template you can use to do this. Let's see what this one is. The Parkers. Okay. This is all about Parker. These are our hopes and dreams. And this is a 2-page one. Strengths and gifts. Learns better visually, finds humor in things typical peers find funny. Very analytical, tries new solutions. What works for Parker? Routines and structure in his day, choices, praise and encouragement, high expectations. What doesn't work? Gluten-free, dairy, soy, not allowing him to complete a task, lack of structure. So, I mean, there's lots of ways to approach it, but, you know, here people they get introduced to your child as a person. Here's our family. Here here he is with grandma. So,
Judy,
yes,
can we provide that template? Do you have a template that we can send people?
I think we could. Yeah.
Okay, I can make sure that gets out.
Trying to remember which are the really good ones here, but, you know, here's Parker, I think this is. No, Dennis. Again, strengths, what works, what doesn't work. But you know, it's a nice thing to have to bring to an IEP meeting.
Yep.
So, and they're fun to do. I've had families use them when they're meeting a new physician or going to some other new program. Just, oh, here, I'm going to introduce you to my child, you know. So,
See, there's another question as well. I've already had our local elementary school reach out to me. Does that mean that that will be our placement?
that's a good question. No, it doesn't necessarily. Have you been through, does your child have an IEP now for school for the fall?
No, they don't. They just sent me the registration info.
Well, that's interesting that they found you and sent it to you. You didn't register your child in kindergarten?
No, but I thought it might be because it's Centennial and he's in the preschool there.
Oh,
It's-
he's an EEP Centennial?
Yeah.
Yeah. It might be, I would ask your teacher service coordinator or ask them at the school, should I be filling this out?
Okay.
Someone put in the chat, thank you, on the fact website, which I talked about earlier in the presentation. There's samples and copies of the one-page profile too, so. Nellie, we should make a note. That would be a fun parent chat.
Yes, I already made it. Profiles.
Great. Well, it's 5:06 and I know people committed to be here for an hour, but you will get my slides from Nellie and my email's there. Don't hesitate to reach out and we'll be sure this information is posted. And never hesitate to ask questions. You can ask me, you can ask Nellie, you can ask your service coordinator.
I just put my email in the chat if anyone needs anything, or if we haven't already communicated, it probably means I don't have your email. And if you would like the materials from tonight, make sure to send me a quick email.
Great.
Great.
Then
Thank
thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Good luck with your transitions. Hope they all go smoothly and everything works out well for next year.